Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, one of us is celebrating.
And one of us is looking for revenge. But we have to wait till September. First, a quick look at the SRBB headline.
MLB is considering a plan to increase player pools by 15.
The Pac-10, Pac-12, MAC, and Mountain West conferences have all either canceled or postponed their fall sports seasons. The Big 12, ACC, and SEC have all decided to play on.
Former draft pick of the Detroit Tigers, Patrick Mahomes, is now a part owner of the Kansas City Royals.
The Western Conference Lakers and Clippers secured the number 1 and 2 seeds, respectively, in the upcoming NBA playoffs. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. Just when we thought that all was good, back to normal, the Cardinals were finally going to start playing baseball. We're going to have all the teams playing on one day, which hadn't happened since early in the season, like July 26th. The Reds went and thumbed their noses at everything and said, COVID, whatever. And so much for everybody playing this last weekend. Although, does look like the Cardinals came back okay, and apparently COVID makes you good at baseball.
I guess COVID does make you good at baseball. Cardinals came back and played. They won both games against the White Sox, as they had to play a doubleheader. But they did lose on Sunday, so maybe they didn't have the super strength strain of COVID.
But it took a big act for them to lose. Not just one home run, but 4 home runs back to back to back to back. That accounted for 5 runs. They lost 7-2. Without those 4 home runs, they're tied 2-2. Who knows what happens? I give them a break on that one.
Okay. Yeah, they had a rookie pitcher, so maybe that was the issue. And maybe he wouldn't have pitched if they didn't have the COVID issue. I don't know.
Very true. That was a big question with the Cardinals coming back. They had been off longer than the Marlins were. 2 solid weeks of no baseball and really very little baseball activity. So where other teams have been playing and maintaining, and you're starting to see some of these guys seem to have been slumping, like Francisco Lindor, guys like that, now starting to pick it up. And you're seeing other guys who have been okay getting into a better groove. Mookie Betts. There's guys that they're starting to come around. You're starting to see guys feel a little more comfortable. And that makes sense. They're finally have enough competition that they're feeling better about it. You thought, well, maybe the Cardinals wouldn't have this same thing because they've not done anything. They've been stuck at home. They've had very little opportunity to have any competitive baseball. So they come back and take out the White Sox, who have been playing pretty well. They take 2 of them. Like we said, they lost on the Sunday game, but it was a historic situation that they lost.
True. There have been 29 games that have been postponed. Marlins had 7 games, the Cardinals 13. The Phillies, even though they didn't have, they had the negative test. I think they had a couple that were staff members.
Yeah, non-players.
But they were out because of the Marlins. So they had the 7 games. And then the Reds had the 2 games with the Pirates over the weekend. So that's a lot of games.
Plus the Blue Jays, the Nationals, who only because they were going to play the Marlins were affected, not because anything happened with it.
Right. And the Cardinals had the Brewers, the Tigers, the Cubs, and the Pirates that were all affected. To me, these teams have to make up these games somehow. So MLB came up with the doubleheader, 7 innings each game. But how is it fair that you have these teams that, in the Marlins case, was, I think, pretty obvious that they weren't following protocol. Cardinals seem to be on the same path as the Marlins, maybe not as bad, but still something going on there. And now these teams that they put into into a bind because then they had to rearrange their schedule. And now they have to play double headers against these teams because they weren't following protocols. I don't think that's fair.
No, and the double headers are the only way to make up for the missed games that they have to make up. You know, you figure going into the weekend, the Cardinals had only played 5 games for the season. They're going to have to play. I think I heard something the other day about like 40 games. There'll have to be a lot of double headers in there to make that up. They want to make up as much as they possibly can. They may not be able to get to the 60 mark because you figure we're third of the way through. A lot of teams are at 20 or above games. There's some exceptions, but that puts them down because really, what's that, 8 games for the Cardinals now?
Yeah.
The Cardinals messed up, or the players messed up that went to wherever they went, the strip club casino or whatever. Maybe it was a combination place. I don't know.
I don't know either.
And then, but you figured, okay, the Mariners did their thing. You think everybody's going to learn from that. And a lot of teams and a lot of players did learn from that and said, okay, I have to take this more seriously. They hadn't done anything at that point, but it put it to the front of their mind. The Cardinals were right on the heels of the Marlins. And I think that some of that probably happened before the full fallout of the Marlins. Then we go to Cleveland. Actually, we go to Chicago, where the Indians are there. And 2 of the main starters for the Indians decide to go out on the town, Zach Plesac and Mike Clevenger. Now, if these are just 2 guys that were from the bullpen, or they were at the end of the rotation, or on the taxi squad, people aren't going to think too much about it. But these are 2 main pieces. Zach Plesac leads the league in Ks per walk, 12 strikeouts per every 1 walk. He leads the league in that. So it's not like he wasn't contributing. And in his head, it was okay to go out with some friends. They don't have it. I'm not going to get it. And even if I do, I'll get over it. Just think about it. How many people are you hearing of all these baseball players who have gotten it? You haven't heard of anybody. All of them are back, or most of them are back, with the exception of these 2 guys that I'm aware of. All the Marlins players are eligible again, as are all the Cardinals players. We're waiting to see what happens with the Reds. So far, it just sounds like 1 player.
Yeah,
but we don't know
it
more, and it hasn't come out yet. They're still waiting on tests before they decide what they're going to do with the Reds. And we don't know who the player is, technically. There is rumors out there, but we don't know. Yeah. So here's a guy who does that. And then Mike Clevenger, too. And you would think that they would know better on the road, where there's a lot of ways to get caught on the road. Players now realize what's going to happen. They've seen it. That means we don't play. That means potentially you bring it back in here, and even if I get it and I get over it, we're still not playing. And you put the league in jeopardy of not playing, which means none of us get paid anymore. And I've always said the way to get somebody's attention is to mess with their money. And that wakes them up.
Yeah, and going to the NFL, just recently, the Seattle Seahawks, I can't remember the player's name, but he tried to bring a girl back to his hotel, was caught and cut from the team.
They don't mess around.
And the Zach Plesac situation and Mike Clevenger, they went out with friends in Chicago after winning against the White Sox. They went to dinner with friends. They went back to an apartment afterward to hang out. Plesac said that at no time was the group he was with larger than 8 people, but that doesn't matter because if you're with 2 people, one has it, you can get it. He admitted breaking curfew. He was reported by MLB security as being out in public and coming back to the hotel after 10 p.m. And they decided to send Plesac back to Cleveland. Now, Mike Clevenger had been with Plesac, but nobody knew that at the time. But he didn't self-report to the team. So he was also isolated and ordered to undergo further testing. Both pitchers were moved to the restricted list before the Indians played the Cubs. And then the interesting thing to me is they had a team meeting with Clevenger and Plesac so they could get this out in the open. This is what we did. This is why we did it. And they were sent to the alternate site for Cleveland. The team didn't feel that they were good teammates. And Plezak put an Instagram post up or a video, I think it's been taken down since, where he rants and raves about how the media made it out to be more than what it was and that he wasn't being a bad teammate. But when you look at the Indians, they have the pitcher who had cancer, is in remission. He's back now.
Yeah,
But
Carrasco.
that's a big deal. So when you are basically sneaking out of the hotel, because why do they even have a curfew if they're supposed to be in the hotel at all times?
Right.
That kind of threw me. But they were bad teammates. And I think that the Cleveland organization did what they should have done, which is they made an example of these two because they didn't seem to care. Like, yeah, we went out and we weren't around a lot of people, but
Right.
that's not the point. The point is you could get this, you could bring it back, and then you could have the same situation that the Marlins or the Cardinals had.
And here's the thing that both of those guys need to think about. The Indians didn't need them. They swept the Tigers, who have been playing well. A lot of what I've been seeing now is somebody going to get traded. The trade deadline is just a couple of weeks away now. Will one of these guys, I don't think they trade both of them because eventually they're going to need them.
Good point. And who wants them? Who's going to take them because of their actions? But there will be teams that will, just based on their pitching.
And that's a good question. Who would want them? On one side, a team that's having pitching issues like the Angels, they would be a team that would consider. But also, I think, unlike other times, I think this becomes a team meeting thing. Do we want this guy who didn't care? And especially for Mike Trout, who made such a big deal about it at the beginning, does he want somebody like that on the team? Yeah, he can help. Both those guys could help. They've been great pitchers. But what happens?
Right. And if they're traded, we'll use the Angels, and they get to the team, the Angels just need to lay down the law and say, in our organization, this is what we do. If you aren't going to be part of that, then you don't start.
Well, didn't Joe Madden say at the beginning of the season, the guys who should opt out are the guys who don't think that they can live by these rules?
Exactly.
So there's two guys that should have opted out.
Right.
I don't think that anything, every time something like this happens, baseball Twitter loses its mind. All the team sites lose their mind. The season's over. It's done. On one side of it, and I've said this before, I feel like maybe having the season wasn't a good idea from the standpoint of the overall game. With some exceptions, there's been excitement. 4 home runs in one game. We'll talk more about the weekend series between the Dodgers and the Angels. But even when we talk about the Dodgers, their series versus the Padres right before that. And exciting things if you're a Dodgers fan, or even if you're just a baseball fan. Different things that are happening. But overall, we're seeing lots of strikeouts. We're seeing lots of teams leaving people on base. It's not a great game this year overall. And from that standpoint, that's why they should have rethought it. I honestly felt with the COVID things that it would be less of an issue on the road because of all those things. Teammates can see you go, security can see you leave. I thought it would be a bigger issue for the players at home. People they know would come over. Some of these guys live close to their families in the cities they play in when they're at home. You guys aren't living on the same street. This isn't Royals or Mariners Way where only the Seattle Mariners live on this road in Seattle. We have our own gated community, so that way we can keep track of you all the time. So I thought that would be the bigger issue, that somebody would end up having a family gathering. And that's where they would come back with, because there's too many random actors out there that you might come in contact while you're at home. And nobody sees if you decide to go out and eat somewhere when you're at home. Nobody sees that you decided to go to Home Depot on a day off. And I thought that would be a bigger issue. Apparently, everybody needs to look and see what's happening in the West, because so far, no issues.
Right. No issues. And I wonder too if, I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but where the teams are, does that, like what their state restrictions are, does that play into it? I think the West, California, here in New Mexico, of course, we don't have a major league team, but more restrictive. I'm going to say more restrictive, but more, face coverings are mandatory in public. Restaurants are only open for takeout. You can't even dine in. So I'm wondering too, if there's, depending on where your team is, if you go from more restrictive and then you're out on the road and it's not as restrictive, like, hey, I can go out to eat at a restaurant, and you take that chance. But really, it should be across the board for that. But I see too, in our headlines, we talked about college football, and I think there are conferences that will play, but these are college students. So how is that going to affect? Are they going to have parties like they normally do? These guys are younger too, Clevenger and Plesac. And so they're not thinking, whereas you do have teams that have the older guys, they have families, and they're taking this more seriously. And I think that plays a role in the whole thing. And I think too, with Mike Trout, his wife was pregnant, they have a new baby. There's a lot of guys that are in that same situation, and they want to do everything they can to protect their family. So I think it goes back to how you feel about it and your age. The younger you are, you seem to be more invincible. Yeah, I'll get it, but I'll get over it. But you may also give it to 6 other people.
And you never know who you'll give it to that it might have a greater effect on.
Right.
And whether you believe in that or not, when you're part of the team, if you're out on your own, walking the streets and all these things, these videos we see that are going viral of people losing their minds because they're asked to wear a mask or whatever, that's one thing. This group of people are all in a common endeavor. They're supposed to be teammates. And look what happened. Their team said, we don't believe you're good teammates. And they were sent off to the alternate site. And who knows when they might come back. So they get to sit in purgatory for a little while, even if they've tested negative 800 times, simply because they're not trusted. And that's one of those things that can stay with you for a long time.
Yeah, you'll always be that teammate.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
After a little rough patch, and what seemed to be the continuings of a rough patch with one of their main rivals, the San Diego Padres, the Dodgers woke up in the last 2 games of that Padres series and overall had a great weekend. We'll get more into the main event as far as we're concerned in just a minute. Let's talk a little bit about what happened in the Ravine versus the Padres.
Yeah, so those first 2 games were shaky. The first game, the Dodgers lost 2-1. No offense. They were 4 for 30, the whole offense for the Dodgers. Corey Seager was out of the lineup because of back discomfort. Dustin May was on the mound, so there was that code red, and he did really well. He pitched 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 1 home run, but if you don't have the offense, which was non-existent in that game, then even Dustin May can't win that game for you. I do want to mention Dustin May has the second hardest fastball behind Jacob deGrom. It moves more than any other in Major League Baseball, 19 inches on average, and it has an 80% strikeout rate.
That's a wicked pitch. Kept going back and looking at it over and over again. Stripling didn't have a really good outing versus the Padres either.
He did
not. Gave up a granny to your favorite player of all time.
I know, Manny Machado.
Who has received more intentional walks than any other player in the league thus far. Because he's such a weapon, such a threat. And we talked about this last week. He's not the threat that Tatis is. I would put him like Trent Grisham and he are kind of similar in the overall numbers. Hosmer's been better, but he did it against his old team for 2 months?
Yeah.
His old team that he was on
It was
for
a
2 months.
rental. Yeah, Stripling didn't have a good outing. 4.2 innings, 6 hits, 6 runs, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, and 2 home runs, which, as you mentioned, one was a grand slam. Now, in that game, Justin Turner did get his 1,000th career hit, so that's pretty cool.
As well as hitting a home run in the series.
Yep, did that. Now, Manny Machado's grand slam was set up because there were errors by Ross Stripling and Justin Turner that loaded those bases. It was very costly.
And that's why Stripling only had 2 earned runs versus 4.
Right.
Or 6.
Or 6, yeah. According to Joe Davis, he mentioned that if the season continues as it is, and this is across all of baseball, it's on track for the most strikeouts and the lowest batting averages ever in MLB. I thought that was an interesting.
Those strikeouts. I don't think that the guys, and I talk more about strikeouts coming up. Their series versus the Padres, and this is the thing. In watching, especially the last game of the series, because the Angels were off, I was able to focus completely on that game, and that was the last thing I wanted to see. Them waking up the way that they did. Actually, the last 2 games, because the first game they lost, but the second game they won 6-0.
Yeah.
And they had Catman, Tony Gonsolin, had a great game.
He did. 8 strikeouts.
1 walk, so that's pretty good. He looked really good. He looks less like Frank Zappa now with the full beard.
Right. Yeah.
But he had a good game. That one was a pretty good, and that's where JT hit his home run. But the last game, they were just on fire. The Padres sent their ace to the mound, Chris Paddock, and he just had trouble. There were 4 different players hit home runs in that game. Corey, AJ, and Cuz actually hit a home run. Cuz had a great series as well. He started hitting the ball, which didn't we talk bad about him not hitting?
We did. Yeah. And last 2, the 2 games, well, the game that they lost, the 6, he was 2 for 4. And in the 11-2 win, where he had that home run, he was also 2 for 4. And he had a 2-run homer. Corey Seager hit a home run. That was his first game back from his back issues. And the bullpen's looking good. Julio Urias was out there. He pitched 6.1 innings. He gave up 2 home runs. It wasn't a stellar outing for him, but he looked good on the mound.
Well, and that was the only 2 runs.
Yeah.
So if you give up 2 solo home runs, who cares?
Right. So when he was taken out of the game, you could see him in the dugout replaying it in his head, what he could have done here or there, but he still had, it was still a good outing for him. But Mookie Betts had a 3 home run night.
Yes, he
did. It was
did.
Crazy every time. I mean, he got hit by a pitch. I think he hit a single, and every other time he hit a home run. It was awesome.
And he is the 3rd player to reach 6 3-homer games in his career. And I believe he got there the fastest, right? Like 800 and some odd games.
Like 873. That might be off, but it was 813. That's what it was.
Cheating, Mookie.
But Sammy Sosa, he joined Sammy Sosa and Johnny Mize as the only players in MLB history to have that distinction.
I've always appreciated him as a player, but I didn't really know because he played in Boston. Obviously, every Sunday night you can watch the Boston Yankees. Even if they're not playing, there's a Boston Yankees game on ESPN every Sunday night. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but that's every time. And so you'd get to see him occasionally. He came, the Angels would play the Red Sox twice a year. So you'd get to see him there. My appreciation of Mookie Betts has grown exponentially since he's been with the Dodgers. And for many reasons, how he plays the outfield, how he plays the game completely. He didn't start off the season great hitting wise, but a lot of them didn't. We talked about Cody and his inability to get going. We talked about Max and his inability. We never talked about Mookie. And obviously by the time we were talking about them, Mookie had been picking it up. But the one thing that really grabbed me about him was after the game, he's talking to Alana Rizzo, the field reporter for the Dodgers channel. And she was like, how does it feel to tie this, this record? How's it feel to be part of history? He's like, it's okay. In the big picture, it's not that important. And at that moment, I realized, you know what? I don't care about these little individual things. At the end of your career, you can look back and see what you accumulated. But what I'm getting from him, and I've gotten it from other players, is it doesn't matter that I've done this fast or that I've done it this many times. And that puts me in the upper echelon. It just matters that we win. Because at the end of the day, people are going to remember the W's. And you're not going to remember every game. When you look at the standings, you're not going to remember, oh, they've won 20 games or they won 110 games. You're not going to remember how they won 110 games. You're just going to remember the W and that they moved on. Because in the end, really, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And Mookie he's a good teammate. One of the things that stuck out to me was the post-game interview with Dave Roberts when they asked him about Mookie Betts and this 3 home run game that he had. And he was like, yeah, it was awesome to watch. He said, but Mookie is the type of player who is, as you said, and as he said, he's concerned about winning. He deflects a lot too, because he had 3 home runs, but he says it's the other guys that are helping us getting on base and getting where they need to be. But the other thing that really stood out to me was when Dave Roberts said he's on the bench working with these other guys, talking to them about hitting. And when I heard that, I thought, please let him be talking to Cuz. He's got to be talking to Austin. And he is. He's been helping him out, and it shows. So maybe having somebody take an interest and help him a different perspective, because, every team has a hitting coach, but having a different perspective, and especially from somebody like Mookie Betts, an MVP, it makes a difference because you want to go out there and do well.
Plus, it's a guy who's playing every day, who's seen the pitcher. So he's out there and he's working it. Honestly, right now, Mookie leads Major League Baseball in WAR with a 1.9. And I'll, without hesitation, say, as of now, Mookie Betts is the best player in baseball. It's not because of WAR. It's just his overall play. There's a reason why he leads in WAR, which is wins above replacement, which means if you took just a standard, if 0 is the number of, say, bringing up a AAA right fielder, Mookie's worth 2 more wins than that guy. So that gives you some value with him, and it accumulates through the season and over a career. So if you look at somebody and says they've got 100 and some odd WAR, that's their career, not that season. He's not good for 100 wins in a season. And that's always been a Mike Trout thing. But right now, Mookie Betts is the greatest ball player in baseball. And right now, he's a lot better than Mike Trout.
I would agree. I'm glad to see him in Dodger blue. I knew that glove, that blue and white glove, meant something. I know you weren't sure about it before he even signed, because we weren't even sure if he was going to play.
Because they have similar colors. The Royals, that was a good glove for the Royals. Or
Sure, right. I don't believe that. I knew it. But well, no, now I know it.
I said before he's going to the Royals.
But you really do want a teammate like Mookie Betts on your team that really is, as you said, he is the best ball player in the major leagues right now. But it's not about him. It's the team and helping out the other guys too, to help make them better. Like he said, you knew about Mookie Betts because he played for the Red Sox. He's been an MVP previously, won those honors. Obviously, we saw him in the World Series. But when you see him and you're seeing him play every day, it makes a big difference on who you really get to know. The other thing I will say, Mookie Betts always needs to be hitting first in the lineup. And I'm glad Dave Roberts finally saw that.
Since we're talking about Mookie, let's move on. And I'm going to start off this with one bright spot for the Angels in this weekend series. Because as everyone probably knows, this is the one time it'll be 2 times this season, and usually there's 2 times this season where we don't necessarily see eye to eye on the matchups. The Dodgers swept the Angels this weekend, which just frustrated the daylights out of me. But the Dodgers came in playing really well. That's why I said when they came off that 11-2 win, things were clicking. And I saw some things with the Dodgers over the weekend that as much as I was, and this is the games that makes me realize who is really my favorite team. Because as much as I am a fan of the Dodgers, when they play, the guys that I like, when they do things, frustrate me, and I'm mad at them for doing that against my team. And I'm frustrated with my team when they don't play well. But Mookie Betts played a part of the play of the week. The play of the week was a Mookie Betts hit into deep at short. David Fletcher goes far to his right, comes up with the ball, makes an off-balance throw, incredible throw to get Mookie Betts at first base. We'll find it and we'll put it up on our social media and on our website, but that was named the play of the week by MLB. And when you see it, you'll understand why he just beats him.
Yeah, Mookie Betts is fast.
I don't think that the Dodgers challenged the call. Because when they went back and looked at it, they saw, and it looked real close. But that was a major highlight. David Fletcher, who has been pretty much the MVP of the Angels this year.
I liked a quote Joe Madden said. He really likes David Fletcher. He can put him anywhere. But he said when he plays at short, he thinks he's Andrelton Simmons. He's not, but he thinks he is. And so he did make some really good plays where he was off balance, but still made the out. And to make the out against Mookie Betts, who's a speedster on the bases, is very impressive. So yeah, we'll definitely have to put that up because that would be a bright spot for the Angels in that series. The first game, Clayton Kershaw was on the mound. Really good outing for Clayton. 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. The home run again was courtesy of Rendon, who hit that one out. Obviously,
another guy who we talked about having issues. Now he does walk a lot. He's walked over 20 times, or at least 20 times this season, and he got walked a couple of times during this series. But he comes up. The problem was that Clayton looked more like Clayton.
Yeah,
and the Angels hitters just aren't adjusting well to. You see him one time. Some of these guys have seen him before. And he made up for a bad previous outing. They could have probably adjusted more. But I get the feeling that they saw how he's pitching and they almost just said, okay. I mean, there were moments. It's not like they didn't try to come back a couple times. But it's, as I said, the Angels give up a lot of runs and then try to fight from behind. It's hard to do that against certain teams.
Right.
Like the Dodgers, especially when they come in hot. And Cody Bellinger.
2 home runs.
Picked it back up. When the Angels and the Dodgers came into the series, if you just look at stat lines, they looked very close.
Mm-hmm.
They had similar number of home runs, similar numbers of left on base, runs scored. At the end of the series, the Dodgers and the Angels are within 2 of each other left on base. The Dodgers have left 148 on base. The Angels have left 146. But here's where the difference is. They're close there, but the Dodgers have scored 128 runs. The Angels have only scored 104. The Angels have loaded the bases 11 times during the season. I don't recall during the weekend that they had done it, that they ever had the bases loaded.
I don't think so.
But 11 times they've left bases loaded. They're not hitting well with runners in scoring position. They've had 38 home runs, but that's what they're living and dying off of. The Dodgers, 43 home runs. Now, they did the other night, manufacture a couple of runs. In this series, they had to manufacture a couple of runs. Pitching-wise, There was just issues. Second game,
went into innings. Walker Buehler was on the mound for the Dodgers. Again, not what we're used to seeing with Walker. Had 5 strikeouts. He went 4.2 innings, 6 hits, 5 runs. 4 of those earned, had 1 walk, and Mike Trout hit a home run off of Buehler. So he's not up to his potential where he normally is and what we're used to seeing. And even that fire, because Walker Buehler is very demonstrative pitcher, and even that you're not seeing as much or hardly at all when he's pitching. So something's off there. In the first game, Max Muncy was out of the lineup, which he definitely needed that to be out. We talked about Max and him just being uncomfortable. He came back in the second game and looked like he was more relaxed, looked like he was having fun. Mookie Betts hit a home run. Austin Barnes was 1 for 5, but he was getting on, he got on base. So you're seeing, as we talked bad about him last week, maybe he should be riding the pine. Or in the luxury seats, I guess, hanging out with those not playing. He's putting it together. Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, showing off skills defensively. Chris Taylor still gets those hits when the Dodgers need them, it seems like. And another good game, but it went into innings with 10 innings. Chris Taylor started off on the second base. And something you never see, first batter up is hits a sac fly, which is Max Muncy, and Chris Taylor scores. But Chris Taylor had also stole third. The Angels pitcher, whose name escapes me right now, never looked to see where he was, what he was doing. And he's another one that's really got speed on the base pads. I mean, he made a really weird blunder against San Diego in one of the first games, but he's made up for that since then.
Yeah, it was Keenan Middleton.
Yes.
Who's normally really good. As much as it bugged me at the time, it was nice to see Max smiling. He hadn't really been. You talked about Julio Urias sitting on the bench, running through the game in his head. Max actually smiling, seeming a little looser, had some hits. So basically, a great weekend for the Dodgers. Not even a not so great. It was an absolutely terrible weekend for the Angels. Even with the Jennings game, they just didn't look good at any point. A flash here, a flash there. Obviously, David Fletcher's play, a couple of home runs from Trout and Rendon. But overall, not a great outing. One guy who had a great outing, and it made me think about this and I believe I sent you a text about it. The Angels have a top prospect up with them now in Joe Adell. The Dodgers bring up one of their top prospects in Keeper Ruiz. And what does he do his first at bat?
Hits a home run.
Anybody that's watched any games of any team have probably noticed that in a lot of stadiums, they have sections of the seats covered with tarps, fitted tarps. And some of them have advertising. Some of them have the Angels. Most of them have just the A logo on it. And where it bounced and rolled, they thought that it went under one of the tarps. And so they're out looking under the tarps. And at one point, the guys who weren't playing, the bullpen, all that, they were all up excited. Julio Urias, he's out there looking under the tarp and trying to help find it. They finally found it because it looked like it bounced off the tarp and up into the next section. Normally, everybody ignores the rookie in their first home run. So when they come back in, they're like, yeah, whatever. But they were all over and, celebrating the best that they could.
Yeah, cool thing about his home run, he is going to send the home run ball, his first home run in the majors, back to his parents in Venezuela. And I thought that was really cool. He signed with the Dodgers, I believe, when he was 16. So he's been up here. He learned how to speak English by watching the Fast and Furious movies. And yesterday he wanted to do his press conference in English, and he did. Yeah, it was really neat to see this kid that we've been hearing about. If you're a Dodgers fan, you've been hearing about him all this time, and finally get to see him in that first home run. First at bat was a home run. It was really cool. cool baseball moment.
So a great weekend for the Dodgers. Heading into the next week, they have Seattle coming in, so the Seager brothers get to hang out together.
Yeah, they'll be at home for 2 against the Mariners and then 2 in Seattle. This will be the first time that Corey and Kyle will face off. The last time the Dodgers played the Mariners in August of 2018, Corey Seager was injured, so he didn't play. It'll be the first time that the brothers play against each other.
Obviously, if the Dodgers had a great weekend, the Angels did not. Before I get too deep into that, let me go back and tell you that it was a hard series to watch versus the Dodgers because of the series with the A's that happened right before it. The Angels won their first series of the year, and they beat the best team in the AL West and one of the best teams in the American League, 2 out of the 3. With the first night being a come-from-behind win, Mike Trout hits 2 home runs. Anthony Rendon hits 1. Shohei Ohtani hits 1. They end up winning 10-9. It was a great game overall to watch, and it was uplifting from the standpoint that we hadn't seen them really do that. Mount a comeback. They really worked hard, and they came back to win it. And I was surprised that they were able to do it, especially against a team like the A's.
Yeah, that game, Trout, Ohtani, and Rendon went 8 for 12 combined with 4 home runs, a double, 3 walks, 8 runs scored, 7 RBIs. So great showing from those 3 guys. And what you want to see as an Angels fan, you want to see your top players out there producing those numbers.
Anthony Rendon started hitting all of a sudden. He's getting walked, but he was hitting. All the things that we expected from him seemed to be coming through. And I didn't believe he would stay in a slump the whole time. I'm not an alarmist like everybody, like, hey, this guy is terrible. And here we go again. We didn't sign any pitcher, so we went and got some hitter. He's not like signing Josh Hamilton. So anyway, I just frustrated with the whole thing. And then with the Angels and the A's series, like I said, it's that hope roller coaster that a lot of people win. The Dodgers used to have it in Brooklyn. The saying in Brooklyn was, wait till next year. And next year never seemed to come till about 1955, I think it was.
Yep. I was just going to say in game 1, you really saw the Angels offense get that spark where you had Trout and Ohtani and Rendon, but then you had the pitching that got hit really hard because Tehran, gave up 5 runs over 2+ innings. And then the bullpen had to come in and pick up the slack. I think it was Matt Andres who came in and he got hit hard, but the Angels came through with the offense, so that helped them. But in the next game, who's on the mound?
The guy you're lucky you didn't have to face,
right?
As a Dodgers, Dylan Bundy.
Exactly. He had 10 strikeouts.
Dylan
again.
Bundy not only leads the team in WAR as a pitcher, that's pretty good, but he's also tied for the league lead in WAR for the American League.
Yeah,
he's tied with
impressive.
Lance Lynn with a 1.6 not ERA, with a WAR of 1.6.
Yeah,
Mookie Betts is 1.9, and he plays every day.
Right.
It just tells you how good Dylan Bundy's been this year. And this is a guy that when we got him, is he going to be good or isn't he? Did we really see the real Dylan Bundy in Baltimore, regardless of his so-called potential? Or will the change of scenery, will playing in a different park for a different team? Bundy, like you said, 10 Ks, 4 home runs for the Angels that night. Like I said, they live and die by the home run. But when you're
7 scoreless innings.
Exactly.
Dude, that's impressive. 4 hits, 1 walk. Dylan Bundy has a 1.57 ERA, 35 strikeouts in an MLB leading 28 2/3 innings. He reached double digits in back-to-back starts for the second time in his career, strikeouts, and the first time since 2017. So he is a huge bright spot for the Angels.
Huge. He's like the only bright spot most of the time, other than David Fletcher, who's been a bright spot since he came up. Now, with the fact that Andrelton Simmons is about ready to come back, it's now going to become, where do we put Fletcher?
Yeah, you got to
He's got to play.
Yeah.
Can't be the guy that's not playing. Home runs that night by Rendon, Castro, Goodwin, and Fletcher. And Brian Goodwin, he hit one against the Dodgers as well on Sunday. So they just, at that point, you're like, oh. And then it made those two games made the Wednesday matinee not feel as bad. They got beat 8-4. Griffin Canning didn't look great. Overall, they couldn't seem to get the bats going. And honestly, there were a couple of times that everybody in the Angels organization was wondering when Ramon Laureano of the A's, when his suspension was going to start, because he robbed a couple of home runs, and he had a great day.
He really did. Bob Melvin said that he wasn't sure if he could put him in the lineup because they hadn't heard anything about his suspension. And when they hadn't heard anything, he went ahead and sent the lineup card, because they do it digitally, with him in it. And so, yeah, he had a defensive game that was off the charts.
Oh yeah, no, he was fantastic. I was happy to see when he got out. I was like, don't you want to take him out of the game? I mean, the Angels overall, not bad. Another day with Trout and Rendon both hit home runs that day.
Yep.
So, I mean, those are the guys those two guys should be doing it every day. There should never be a question. And you Rendon's finally coming around.
In the Dodgers series, you saw Trout getting struck out looking. Not a good look. And I think Kenley Jansen seems to be his kryptonite in that, because that's the game ended. And I have to say, when I was watching the game, I know going back to the Dodgers series with the Angels, and he came up, there were runners on, and I thought, oh man, because Kenley Jansen looked really good this year, but there's always in the back of your head, which Kenley Jansen. And with Trout at bat, it could have turned, the game would have been a win for the Angels, but it worked out in Dodgers' favor.
You always look when you're down, or when the game is tied, and you're going into, especially the ninth, the announcers even mention it, but you're always looking, where are we in the lineup? Will Trout get a chance to hit? Because you don't know what he's going to do. You don't know how it's going to play off. And you think about it, this is a guy with 9 home runs on the season. He's been hitting home runs like crazy since he came back after baby leave. So you know that he's got the capability. We've talked about it before, about biases, why umpires call a game a certain way, or why we look at certain players. Like Dylan Bundy was a first-round pick, so we expect him to live up to some higher standard. Mike Trout, because he came on out of nowhere, has become meteoric and may go down as one of the best, one of the top 5 best, maybe even the best, depending on what he does here out. We expect more from him, obviously. I also expect better calls. LeBron James goes down the lane for a layup, and maybe it's a charge, he hits the other guy. More often than not, he's going to get the block call because he's LeBron James. Mike Trout, there's a high fastball. It's right at the top of the strike zone, and he watches it every time. And many times it's borderline, so it really could go either way. I'm not saying it's not a strike, but he keeps watching that same strike that pitchers everywhere are seeing. So whoever's watching the games and scouting has picked this up. But I keep thinking, that was just a hair above. Give it to Mike Trout. He's the greatest player in the world. No, he's not getting those calls. But here's the thing that gets me is, and I feel like the Angels more often than not are not reading the scouting reports. They don't adjust to the pitchers. Mike Trout has been struck out by that same pitch looking, and it feels to me like he spends more time arguing where that is than adjusting like he used to always do. He's not getting the calls, and he's not adjusting. Mike Trout, we said, what did we say Mookie Betts' WAR was right now? 1.9?
Yeah.
Mike Trout's WAR, and he's the WAR leader usually, 0.6. Dylan Bundy's WAR is one full game better than Mike Trout. And Mike Trout plays every day.
Yeah.
Mike Trout is co-leader for the home run lead in Major League Baseball. And overall, he's not getting the balls he used to get to. And I get it. There's times where there's no reason to go dive for a ball. You play it off the bounce because of the situation in the game. But he's not doing that. There's been errors out there that he didn't personally make. But the outfield just doesn't seem like it was before. Now, I know he's in his 10th season now, and maybe he's slowing down a little bit. I don't know. But I feel like there's something, whether it's when he came back, it seemed like he wasn't distracted with all the stuff that the baby was coming. Came back strong. But there seems to be something holding him back. You ever see guys work out, especially football players? They put like a harness on and they've got a big weight behind them. And the football players will run down the field pulling it behind them to work out. Sometimes it feels to me like he has one on in the game that keeps him from getting to some of the balls that he should have gotten to. He's not hitting the way that he used to. He's got Mike Trout numbers. He's been up above 300, just below 300. He's been back and forth, but he's not the best player in baseball right now. I don't care who says anything about that. The best player in baseball is Mookie Betts. It's Charlie Blackmon is better than Mike Trout. There's a lot of players that are having much better seasons. And when I start watching like Juan Soto from the Nationals, this is a guy, he right now looks better. I don't want to see Mike Trout become Albert Pujols in the sense that Albert did everything in that first 10, 11-year span. And since then, he's had his moments. And honestly, Mike Trout is a better hitter because he's been teammates with Albert Pujols. But 0.6 WAR. He does have the 9 home runs. He's got 22 strikeouts. The most strikeouts he ever had in a season was 184. I didn't check on his walks, but I looked to see other players that have been like Christian Yelich. He's got 26 strikeouts. He's not at the top, but he's definitely up there with the strikeouts. And it's not just that one high fastball. He's looking at a lot of pitches. I didn't look to see how many times he struck out looking, but his swing rate, his hack rate is low. He's not being aggressive at the plate. He's waiting for that pitch to come. And if he keeps doing that, pitch is never going to come. Batting 200 and staying at 9 home runs. He needs to lead the team. He's not only an MVP, he's the team leader. He's the face of this team. And he's got help now with Anthony Rendon, who's starting to pick it up. Shohei Ohtani, who I think is going through mental issues as far as the game goes. Because he's on one night, and then the next time, some of the times in the Dodger series, he just looked awkward. He didn't look himself. And then we look at the pitching for the Angels, which besides Dylan Bundy, Andrew Heaney, kind of there. Griffin Canning looked like he was going to be there, and then he fell off. Patrick Sandoval, who pitched against the Dodgers, didn't pitch poorly. He just gives up hits in the wrong times. And some of it's not even on him. As I look through to see, Dylan Bundy leads Major League Baseball in WHIP with a 0.628 WHIP. So walks, hits per inning pitch, he's at the top. The 1.6 WAR, tied with Lance Lynn of the Rangers. He's got almost 12 strikeouts per walk. So he's almost there at the top with Plesac. He's got as you said, the 1.57 ERA. And his numbers are great even in the advanced metrics that are out there, like fielding independent pitching, things like that, are still great. When I look at the overall pitching staff, there's him at the top, and then everybody else falls quite a bit below him. There's only a few pitchers under a 1.5 WHIP. So if you look at WHIP, anything over 1.5 usually means that the pitcher's going to give up a lot of runs. But if that's the case, only Andrew Heaney, Patrick Sandoval, Jacob Barnes, Mike Myers, Felix Pena, and Hobie Milner are under 1.5. And Hobie Milner actually leads the team. He's only pitched 5 innings compared to the innings pitched for Bundy. but he's got a 0.563. And I had no idea where he was going to go because he's the one that gave up the grand slam to Matt Olson in that first game against the A's way back in July. So those guys are there. Everybody else, Julio Teheran, who everybody's ready to be released and it just completely dropped on the Angels boards, he does have a bad whip. It's 2.250. So he's given up, and he's not pitched many innings. He's down there like maybe 5 to 8 innings because he's just been pulled out of his starts quickly. But he also came late.
Well, I will say for the Angels, there are bright spots. They will play A's this weekend 3 times, and that's it. No more A's. You don't have to worry about an A's. They do have a series coming up with San Francisco, pretty evenly matched as far as their records go. So that'll be an interesting series. They're going to play 2 at home and 2 in San Francisco, and then the home and home, and then they'll go to Oakland for their last series.
That'll be the last
Oakland.
3 with the A's, and then they're done with them. But then following that, they're going in to see the surging Asterix, who are finally over 500.
Yeah, true. Their hitter for the Asterix, Correa, and his batting average for the team, he leads the team 298.
Well, and Altuve's still not come around, and they played them well when they came through Anaheim.
Yeah.
And they played the A's well. They played too. The team the best team in baseball right now is a team they couldn't play very well against. And that was the Dodgers. I think that there's a couple things that need to happen. Number one, everybody needs to get off Julio Teheran's back. He showed up late with COVID stuff. He played no intra-squad games against his major league teammates, so he didn't face Mike Trout or Anthony Rendon or Shohei or any of the starting lineup in intra-squad games. He went right to Long Beach, and that's a practice. The guys that are there are mostly guys that they're trying to keep developing and get work in because there's no minor league season or to bring back from injury. So you got to give him a little bit of time. If he doesn't come around, he doesn't come around. Then we don't have to sign him again. I also think that it's time to let the number 1 pick of the last draft, Reed Detmers, pop in and see what he can do.
Why
They're
not?
high on him. Why not let him pitch? But this is the thing. The Angels are not the team that, or shouldn't be the team that we're seeing. The bats are cold most of the time. They don't, so for whatever reason, they can't put it together and figure out how to score, how to drive runs in. And it doesn't matter if Mike Trout hits 2 home runs every game and Anthony Rendon hits 1 and Ohtani hits 1 or Castro or somebody else or David Fletcher. If they're only going to score 4 runs or 5 runs and they're going to give up 8 to 10 runs, they're not going to win anything. I don't know what the team ERA is, but it's got to be huge. If Dylan Bundy's the only guy that can pitch, eventually it's going to get to him too, carrying the load. Even though it shouldn't, because it's still one day and he does the best he can do, we need these guys to pick it up. We need the Angels to realize that if they have to go sign or trade for Mike Clevenger or Zach Plesac to get through the season and give them something maybe in the future, then go do it. Those guys maybe learn their lesson. If they didn't, then maybe they'll come back and infect the whole team. You can opt out, and then we won't have to worry about you being so bad. I'm just so tired of it. It made me cuss. Driving down the road. Blanca's like, just looking at me like, what? Because I'm angry about the way they played, and that the Dodgers are a great team. They're solid top to bottom. They got the right guys to fill in the blanks. Max Muncy's played 3 positions in the infield. Kike's been playing second, but Kike could play every position. Chris Taylor playing shortstop, making some good plays, had the play of the week in left field. So it's a great team. The Angels could be there, but Justin Upton's not hitting anything, and we can't do anything with him. We can't trade him because he has a no trade clause. He's a guy that can hit, but he's just not doing it. I don't want to be the rest of his season. The highlight is only that you got your 300th home run. How about the highlight is that you got the 310 or you batted 310. It's ridiculous, and I just hate the fact. I'm almost not looking forward to watching them in San Francisco because I've seen enough of the Giants to know that they can be dangerous. Bring Reed Detmers up and let him pitch. Let's see what happens. And you know what? Why is it that, is there somebody on the bench that's talking to our hitters? No, because nobody's hitting very well. Albert Pujols, he's gotten, obviously, as you get older, you do that, but we're swinging at first pitches that weren't that good to begin with. We're not going deep in the count. A lot of the pitchers out there, once you can get them deeper into a pitch count, they start fatiguing earlier because they're not worked up. They're not stretched out. They're not doing any of that. Sometimes you can get that first pitch and do something with it, but they're not on their game. It doesn't feel like they're reading the scouting report. And Joe Madden needs to have that moment like in Bull Durham where the manager goes into the shower and throws the bats in and starts yelling and screaming at him instead of going, "You're okay, buddy. That's good. You're all right. Let's meditate upon it." I love Joe Madden. I think that he's a great manager and he's a baseball guy. He knows baseball, but I'm not buying into the philosophy. We need some ass kicking and we need it now. We need guys from back in the day. I need Sparky Anderson. I need Billy Martin. I need Tommy Lasorda. I need Earl Weaver. Where's Earl Weaver? I need more than what they're giving me as a fan. Well, while our world was completely focused on goings-on in Anaheim this weekend, there were other baseball games going on. I didn't believe it, but then I looked at the scoreboard on MLB at Bat app, and sure enough, other teams played this last week. So maybe let's take a look and see what happened.
The Yankees and the Red Sox played, and the Yankees beat up on the Red Sox for their 7th straight loss. The Yankees have won the series infinity times against the Red Sox. But I will say the Yankees are still on top in the East, but Aaron Judge is on the 10-day IL with the calf strain. We know that Giancarlo Stanton is on the IL. He's expected to be sidelined for about 3 to 4 weeks with a left hamstring strain. But now DJ LeMahieu is on the 10-day IL with a left thumb sprain. He was batting an AL best of .411, which is 30 for 73 through 19 games, only behind his former teammate Charlie Blackmon. So not a great time for DJ to go on the IL.
2 things. Number one, crazy that Aaron Judge is out and he still holds a tie for the lead in home runs.
Yes.
And they're still killing. Obviously, the Red Sox just are not that good of a team. They're 6-16 as of the end of the weekend. They're not having a good season. But the guy I think that's going to affect this team more than any other will be DJ LeMahieu. Because he's like you said, he's hitting what, 411 you said? So yeah, he's the guy. And I remember when he went, there was a lot of skepticism about whether or not he could hit outside of Colorado, that he had that Denver effect, the Coors Field effect on his numbers. And he's gone and proven anybody who had issues. He did it last year, but he's proven all those people wrong. And I think that his loss in the lineup is going to be greater than either Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton, because him being out of the lineup is more normal than not.
Right. That's true. I was surprised that DJ LeMahieu didn't stay a Rocky because he was such a great part of their lineup. But yeah, he's proven himself worthy to be in the AL East with the Yankees.
Could you imagine, based on what the Rockies are doing this year, could you imagine if both of them were batting over 400 together on the same lineup? Could you imagine that Rockies team? My playoff prediction would be everybody's playoff prediction, I think.
Yes, I think so.
Orioles still looking good in the East?
They're looking good. They did lose a game to the Nationals on Sunday, but Max Scherzer had a 10 strikeout game against the Orioles. He threw 111 pitches, 5 runs. 3 of those were home runs, 3 home runs, and 8 hits. But I think the difference for the Nationals is Juan Soto, who was 2 for 3 in that game, has a 425 batting average right now in a very small sampling of games because he hasn't been back that long. But the Orioles still holding their own.
12-9 at the weekend. Tampa Bay is just ahead of them. And Tampa Bay played our new favorite team in the East, the Buffalo Blue Jays.
Yes. The Blue Jays are 7-11, but now Bo Bichette is on the 10-day IL for a knee, and he is getting a second opinion, so hopefully that works out in favor for Buffalo. But if it's worse, he could be sidelined until mid-September, which would not be good for Buffalo at all.
And
the
he's
Braves,
one of the driving forces for that team. In fact, Gee Whiz trivia, when they played in Buffalo, no runs had been scored by a Buffalo major league team, whether in Buffalo or somewhere else, in 135 years. Jim Lilly was the last major league player to score a run back in 1885. And until the 11th, when Bo Bichette hit a home run, Kevin Biggio became the first run in 135 years for a team in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Just
cool.
Gee whiz.
I will say, going back with the Nationals, you do have Strasburg is on the 10-day IL with the right hand injury. Howie Kendrick is on the 10-day IL with the hamstring. Sean Doolittle is on the IL with his knee. So you're seeing some guys go down. The Braves have the same thing. They've got Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies on the 10-day IL. And then Cole Hamels is on the 45-day IL with the tricep. So we're seeing some guys who make a difference as far as Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies making a difference in the lineup, and the Braves not having them in the lineup could be. I mean, it didn't seem to make too much of a difference. They won 2, and they're in second place, but it could down the line depending on how well they heal from their injuries.
That's the thing too that we're going to have to watch how things start developing on every team when they start getting into injury issues to key players. 10 days is one thing, that's a short time out. But when we start looking at longer times off, sometimes that 10-day IL really turns out to be more.
Yeah. Switching to the AL and NL Central.
The K division.
Talked about the K division, that's right. Talked about the Reds. They had the one player that tested positive. So far, all Reds tests have been negative. It looks like the Kansas City series should be a go this week. So I'm hoping that it's just the one player and it doesn't go any further. Not just for the Reds, obviously, and the players on the Reds, but just for baseball, because we got to get past this whole thing.
It'd be nice to not have that popping up finally, where every game that's scheduled is actually played, that it's only a weather delay or a weather postponement, no more COVID issues.
Right.
So that we can it's hard enough to get through this. And with other sports, not sure if they're in or out. It's going to be a weird fall. We need baseball to be solid throughout the fall. The NFL's probably coming back, but we need that. So these guys need to pull their heads out. What is that Dad used to say, out of the up and locked position? Yeah. Their heads are in the clouds. They need to do that and realize that if they want to continue to play this game, regardless of what their season ends up being, they need to stop doing stupid stuff.
Exactly. I will say a really cool thing happened with the Twins. The Twins are 14-8, but Nelson Cruz became the oldest player with home runs in both games of a doubleheader at the age of 40.
Wow.
So that's
He's
a cool
having a fantastic year. I really wish that if there was one player Albert Pujols should be talking to, and even though Albert Pujols really right now in the game across the board is probably the greatest, not the best, but the greatest player in the game, he needs to talk to Nelson Cruz, because Nelson Cruz is the same age, and Nelson Cruz is ripping it up.
Really is, yeah. When we look at the K division, even without Plesac and Clevenger, the Indians beat the Tigers for the 20th time on Sunday, and the Tigers are under 500 for the first time this season. They've lost 5.
Still better
So-
than Kansas City, which is
Still
9
better
and
than
12.
Kansas City.
And Kansas City's better than the Angels because the Angels have only won 7. The Mariners have only won 7. The Sunday game, Francisco Lindor, another superstar who's been having issues, seemingly broke out of that with a 3 of 5 day.
Yep.
With a home run, 3 RBIs. So it seems like he's waking up a little bit. Bieber at this point, 54 strikeouts.
Continuing
And that was one thing
his run.
we were talking about earlier with the Cardinals and the COVID stuff. With the Cardinals coming into to the weekend had played 5 games. Their pitchers, Bieber, Garrett Cole, and many others, they've already started 5 games. It's good to see that we might start getting a little more of that balance back. But yeah, it's crazy. The Indians, and see, if I'm Zach Plesac and Mike Clevenger, I'm afraid at this point of what's going to happen to me when it looks like that the Indians don't need you.
Yeah.
Whoever's pitching for you is doing an adequate job or a better than adequate job. Cookie Carrasco, who we talked about, was the one that was treated for leukemia last year that's come back, is pitching well overall.
Now, Chicago, who's on a run, they have lost their last 4. The Brewers won 3 straight against the Cubs. They won the series 3-1. Chicago's still on top, but Milwaukee is making a run up there. And it'll be interesting to see because it's Chicago and then you have St. Louis. And St. Louis is there because they've only played, 9 games?
9 games, yeah.
And their winning percentage is better, which is another thing I think we should talk about in another episode, is how that all works out with winning percentages with these COVID teams.
So we're going to call somebody
Milwaukee
from MIT or
Yes.
Caltech that's advanced numbers, mathematics, chaos math, and all that stuff. We need Will Hunting. That's who we need.
We do, because wasn't there at one point in the East where Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta, had a better record than Miami, but they were still half a game back.
Miami had the better winning percentage, but was still a half a game back.
That's right. It was it was the opposite.
Even though now I think the Marlins have played 15 games now, and the Braves have played 23. The Braves have a lower winning percentage. And then in the Central, St. Louis is up there in second place because they have a higher winning percentage than Milwaukee, even though they've played 11 games fewer. The Brewers have played 20 games.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you look at the standings and you see, but the Cubs, like I said, the Cubs still in first place. They were on a run there. Their last 10, they're 5-5. So maybe a little bit of slowdown for the Cubs, but Milwaukee, who started off slow, is picking it back up. I think Yelich is still not the Yelich. He's not, same thing with Cody. He hit some home runs, and got a double here or there, but still not the same, what we were Yelly versus Belly, which was last year.
Well, and neither one of them were really
right.
When you think
they're
about
not up to that.
I guess Yelich, who had a good day the other day, in order to get past everything, the issues he was having, he was down in the tunnel, walked by, and they have buckets of chewing gum, and he grabbed some. He just started chewing it and said, I'm going to think about chewing the gum. I'm not going to think about hitting. And it seemed to work for him. Took his mind off of it.
Well, one thing I didn't mention with the Dodgers, but this is across MLB, is there's no video screens in the dugout anymore. So players used to come in and you'd see them with the iPads and they'd be looking at their swings. Now they can't do that. They can't analyze. You'd see him, you can't go to the video room, can't do those things.
Right.
And Chris Taylor, who is swinging better this season, he was one of the, first one to the video room, first one to leave the video room, first one in the dugout to look at his swings. Now he can't do that. And he said it actually is helping him out because he's not thinking about it. He's in the box.
Because you could get too far into your head.
Exactly.
Let's go back to, you can analyze your at bat without seeing. That's what I'm talking about with like Mike Trout. You would see him going through his head. even in the at-bat. I'm not seeing that. You can
Yeah.
go back after the game, watch video. You can go back after the game and look and see. If you're in a big slump, fine, go check it out. If you're not slumping, if you're hitting, like Chris Taylor's been pretty consistent, don't mess with it.
That's right.
Just like you
Don't
said with
jinx
Cody.
it.
You know, what is it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stay with it. When it stops working, figure out why then. Until then, don't worry about it.
Exactly. So I want to go, if we go to the West real quick, the Diamondbacks swept the Padres. The Padres are on a 5-game losing streak, which when they came into LA to play the Dodgers in those first 2 games, not what you expect the Padres to be on a skid, and not against the Diamondbacks.
Right. The Diamondbacks, I don't know, since the Diamondbacks beat up on the Astros, I give them, they're still not a great team, but I give them more respect, mostly because they beat the Asterix.
Right, exactly.
But, you know,
Well,
coming in and beating a team
place.
as hot as the Padres had been, I think that the Padres versus the Dodgers series really had inverse effect on each. The Dodgers came in limping.
Yeah.
Weren't the Dodgers on a losing streak coming in?
They were. They had.
Padres seemed like the team to beat in baseball, other than the Rockies and the Yankees, obviously. And everything's starting to kind of cool off and even out. But it seems like they swapped. The Padres went on to get swept, and the Dodgers went and swept. Ugh!
And the Dodgers did that the first time in 5 years that the Dodgers have swept the Angels in Anaheim.
I think that makes it even worse because last year the Angels swept the Dodgers in the Interleague Series. Yeah. So they still have 3 more games this season to play right at the end.
Yeah. And Madison Bumgarner, we talked about him. Haven't seen him. He was on the mound and did not look good. He's on the 10-day IL for back issues. So definitely not what the Diamondbacks were looking for when they signed him, but we'll see if and when he comes back, because back issues with pitchers, we've seen it with Clayton Kershaw, who hopefully that's past him for the rest of this season. It can really mess up your whole season, and with only being 60 games, who knows when he'll be back on the bump. And the Rockies bullpen has lost 3 of their relief pitchers to injury. They're currently in a stretch of 33 games in 34 days. They lost their series to the Rangers, so they might be doing a little bit of crumbling there too. When you don't have good relief coming in, that makes a huge difference. Offense, all you want with Charlie Blackmon, who's
but if your pitching staff can't. You can score 10 runs, but if your pitching staff gives up 11, you don't win a lot.
Exactly. And, they're relief pitchers. They're there to save the game. And when you got 3 out due to injury, it doesn't work well.
All right. I have a question for you. Before that, just saw that Tommy Pham from the Padres going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken hand. And he'd been a player. He'd been having some issues overall, but he's been a big part and helped really bring this team together. He's been
he's been a leader
contributor and a big leader for the team for sure. All right, I have a question. On Sunday, the league and the Players Association got together to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Negro League. And so in 1920, Rube Foster said, hey, let's really get this going, and started a league. And we know what came out of that. We know all the great pitchers and everything that came out of that. I have one question, and I've asked this on Twitter of both the MLB, the MLBPA, and a couple of the players. I've gotten no responses, which I didn't think I would. Why? And this was supposed to be a whole season's worth of things. There may still be other times where teams like Pittsburgh may wear the Crawfords uniform, which they did last season. But why would you only wear the patch for one game?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me, because the 100th anniversary of the Negro League's pioneers in baseball. And unless you follow baseball, if you were just somebody that was turning on the game and you're like, oh, look, they're wearing some kind of patch, you wouldn't even know what it was or anything. Normally, of course, during the normal season, there's going to be pre-game ceremonies and things like that. Obviously, that's not happening. But I really felt like, yeah, that Major League Baseball dropped the ball on this one and not celebrating the accomplishments, and then just having this little patch for one day. And why can't the players wear that the whole year?
Well, that was that. And it was also like at the beginning of the season, they had the whole thing with the Black Lives Matter movement, and not to get into that, but they allowed players to wear patches on their sleeve. They had other things, and it was one day, not even the opening weekend. And I thought, you talk about what a big movement this is and how important it is, and then it's one day. The same thing with the Negro Leagues have had an impact to this day on the major leagues. Without the Negro Leagues, a lot of these players would have never had an organized place to play that went on to be in the major league. Why didn't they do more? I don't get it. And they Manfreded it up again.
Totally. It really was. And it also makes me think, this is something that should be celebrated all year long. But what about the other days that are coming up? We have Roberto Clemente's birthday. Jackie Robinson will be celebrated again here coming up, I think at the end of the month. But again, will it be Manfreded up and not have the meaning that those days deserve?
My feeling, though, is it should be a weekend, Jackie Robinson weekend. And for those 3 games set, you wear 42 all 3 games. With Roberto Clemente, what's going to happen? Are we going to have a patch? See, that's the thing that gets me, too. Look at Detroit. Al Kaline died. They're wearing the number 6 on their jersey all season long in memory of Mr. Tiger. Why wouldn't we do that for like the Negro Leagues where they put the patch? It's important.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Just another instance of Manfreding it up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Trying to get that out. But it's true, because everything he seems to touch it's just bad. I will say I have not been there, but we have talked about we need to do a road trip at some point to Kansas City to go to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Would love to go, excited to go, and hopefully one day we can go. And we will not Manfred it up. We will do it right.
And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Next week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we will break down the spin rate and pitch selection of every MLB pitcher.
Just kidding. We don't have time for that. We're still looking for Josh Fields.
You're out!